What is up, guys? I'm Kyle at Fortune, and today we're putting the Samurai front axle back together. So we've been working on this front axle for a few weeks now, and it was actually kind of fun because for once, nothing went wrong. Everything pretty much went to plan, and we have all of the parts to put it back together. Now, if you're looking for a video that's a step-by-step guide on how to put one back together, this really isn't it. Like in my previous video with the teardown, there's already a few videos that show how to do this really well. I'll include one up here at the top. But there are a few things that those videos and some of the things on the forums leave out. So I definitely wanted to make this video to make sure you guys don't make the same mistakes I did in a few small areas, and it could help you save some money too. So this truck is over 30 years old, and before I got it, it was sitting for about 15 years. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of gunk built up in it. When I first started taking apart the front axle, is one of those things where I kind of just wanted to throw away everything because everything was so messy and the bearings were all rusted out. Everything was covered in dirt, but there are a lot of things that you need to hold on to unless you want to pay some money for the replacements, which are not cheap. As far as parts go, I did order a few kits. One of them was all of the seals and bearings that I was going to need, and another was all hardware for the hub and knuckle with some upgraded studs. Those were a huge help, but there's a few things you're going to want to keep track of when you're tearing the axle apart, and I'll go through those as they come up. When you're taking apart the hub, there are a few snap rings, 3 total, that you're going to want to set aside and clean so you can use them when you reassemble the axle. Another is the O-ring that goes around the hub selector. Now, when I pulled mine out, it was all dry and cracked, so I knew I was going to have to replace it, but I wasn't 100% sure where to get it from. It turns out they're over $5 a piece, so if you don't need to replace yours, make sure you keep them. You could probably go to a hardware store and get one of the O-rings there, but I noticed when I got the replacement parts that they're actually not just a circular O-ring, they kind of have a 4-point star pattern when you look at them from the side. So I don't know if that's going to make a difference. Another option is you can go to a Toyota dealership. I'll put the part number in right here. Hopefully they can find that for you. I have no idea how much the price is. Some really easy parts to misplace are the detent spring and ball that come out of the hub selector. Those can just fall on the ground and you'd lose them very easily. I just put all these parts in the same Ziploc bag per side. Not that it really mattered, but just to make sure I had an even number of parts for both sides. I rented one of these race driver kits from the auto parts store, and it's been really helpful. You can just throw it on this little cylinder to help pound it in with your brass mallet. It really helps with putting in these seals and races for these hubs, but even with it, it is super frustrating to do. Some of the old races really helped out putting it in, but just make sure you take your time. I also have a punch I've been using too, just in case the race starts going in a little bit crooked. You can lightly tap it back out and start again. Sometimes doing it a second time gives you a better finished product. With all of the hardware I got from the hardware kit, it was awesome, but it didn't include the hardware for the differentials. So you'll need to save those as well, unless you want to take them to the hardware store, figure out the size, and throw those on too. So I usually use this black silicone gasket RTV from Pro Seal on all of my differential covers and everything, and it usually works fine. But there was a lot of filing I needed to do on some of the surfaces on both sides of the mounting for the differential. So because of that, I'm going to be going with this Permatex gasket maker that's specifically for gear oil to minimize my chances of having a leak. This RTV went on a little bit thicker than I wanted it to. I basically just cut the hole too big on the cap there, but it's not a huge problem. The way I like to do the RTV is I let it sit on the surface for about 15 minutes so it gets a little bit of a skin on it. Then I put the part on there. In this case, it was the third member. I dropped it on there and I started tightening the bolts down, but I didn't torque them. I waited an hour for the RTV to get even a little bit harder. Then I torqued them down to the correct setting. One thing I decided to do with this axle is just run my finger around the side and smooth out all of that RTV. It ends up looking like it's going to be a better seal, and then I just paint it over anyways, and I don't really care if it sticks, but for now it looks good. Perfect. Now, I didn't do a ton of research on these 26 spline axles from Longfield, but I know they're going to hold up way better than the stock, obviously. I don't plan on going bigger than a 31 for quite some time, but eventually I might go up to 33-inch tires, in which case these are probably my best hope aside from the RCV axles. Those RCV axles are considerably more, so this seemed to be a nice middle ground for me. We'll see how they hold up. When I took them out of the packaging, they were already packed with grease, so I didn't have to do the trick where you put all of that grease in a Ziploc bag and shove it in there and wait for it to come out. All the balls inside the Burfield. When I started tearing apart the axle, I was kind of just going through the motions, and I had this mindset that I was just going to get rid of everything. I wanted that peace of mind, and I wanted to know that all my parts were fresh and they were going to be able to take a beating off-road. One of those parts was the spindle bushings. You have to pound them out of that spindle, so they're obviously not able to be reused. But when I was thinking about it later, I wondered, did I really need to replace those? I kind of just went for it, didn't really inspect them. But if you think about it, the only time those spindles are ever going to see any wear is when the truck's in four-wheel drive. This Samurai was pretty much stock when I got it, so I doubt it spent very much time in four-wheel drive. Because I got rid of those bushings, I had to order a replacement. I ended up going with the brass bushings, which are $18 a piece. So $36 to redo those bushings in the front axle. If you don't need to replace them, I wouldn't do it. I decided to not put the dust shields back on. There are just so many people out there talking about wanting to cut it, hitting it with stuff. One thing to remember is that the dust shield does add a little bit of thickness to where the caliper mounts, so you might want to run some washers in that case. Perfect. So that's about it, guys. Very straightforward putting it back together. Having the right tools to do this made it much easier than it could have been. Having everything rebuilt is going to give me that peace of mind that it'll hold up at least to the best of this axle's ability. Plus we have the Spartan Locker in there and the 26 spline axle shaft. So What could go wrong? As always, guys, don't forget to subscribe, and if there's something you want to see that I haven't done yet or I haven't talked about doing, make sure you put it in the comments and let me know what those topics are that you guys are interested in. If you haven't been to my channel yet, go ahead and check out some of these videos. Thanks for watching. See you next time.